app.
And on this Wednesday morning, I'm Simi, Sara, in for John McComb. We're going to talk now about a cab nightmare. Now, this is not, I would say, an unusual situation. Lots of us have stories about things that have gone wrong with a taxi ride that you may have taken. We're going to want you to share some of those stories, but let's see first if they can top this one that our Nikki Reitmeyer is joining us now to talk about. This is quite the story.
Yeah, so this story was brought to my attention by somebody I know named Johnny. Johnny is a bar manager on Granville Street, so works late nights often, as he did on Saturday evening / Sunday morning. And if you know anyone in the bar industry, or if you've ever worked in the restaurant industry yourself, you know, you get off work really, really late into the evening. However, you're one of the few people that's actually sober on Granville Street or wherever you've been working at that point in time. So as he normally does, he said that he went to flag a taxi so that he could get home at the end of the evening, or in this case, it was fairly early Sunday morning after his shift had ended. And here's what he said happened.
This past Saturday evening, I finished work at approximately 3:45. I proceeded along Granville to grab a cab. I hailed one outside the 7-Eleven on Granville and Drake. Immediately he asked me where I was going. I ignored him. I just hopped in the back because it's illegal to ask where somebody is going. So you can't refuse a fare, so I just hopped in the back. And once I got in the back, I told him where I was going, which was Kitsilano. We drove on a couple of meters, and then he said, where exactly in Kitsilano? I said, it's 14th and Blenheim. And he said, oh, it's very far. And I said, well, it's not really that far. And he goes, like, it's $13 or $14. I said, yeah, that's fine. I said, usually, like, I pay $15, whatever. I grab a cab maybe 5-6 nights a week. So I'm well used to paying the cabs from downtown out there. We drove on a little bit more. And at this point, I noticed he hadn't switched on his meter at all. And the light was still on outside the taxi. There was people still flagging him down because they thought he was available. Then he mentioned to me, how are you paying? I said, oh, cash. And he goes, okay, cash. And he said to me, you pay now? I said, no, I won't pay you now. I'll pay when I get to the destination. He said, no, you have to pay me now. I said, no, I really don't have to pay you actually now. And we drove on a little bit more. We came or just literally circled around the block as we were going for the on-ramp to the Granville Street Bridge. And he said to me, you pay now? I said, no, I won't pay now. And he indicated in, and he pulled in, and he said to me, either pay now or get out. I said, well, okay, I'll get out. I proceeded to get out, and I said, listen, buddy, I'll take your details. This is just not on. It's not legal to start with. So I took a step outside the door. As I literally planted my second foot on the ground, he took off at high speed. Took off, rear door wide open, took off maybe 20-30 meters down the street, door wide open, endangering pedestrians, endangering me. I could have had a bag that was snagged on the door. It was recklessness of the highest degree. Absolute madness is what he done. He pulled in maybe, as I said, 20 or 30 meters on and closed his door and just drove off.
Nikki, that is just outrageous that somebody would think they could get away with that, which made me wonder, as I was listening to Johnny's story there, did this cab driver not think that this person might take their details, might report them, or did they think, oh no, it's late at night on a Saturday night, this person's not sober?
Exactly. And then you have someone who's, no, I've been working in the industry. I'm working all night. I'm one of the few people who's actually sober right now and aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And I'm not feeling like I'm being treated very fairly. Taxis can ask for a deposit, but surely they should be asking for a deposit if they feel like there's some risk that they're not going to receive their payment.
Yeah.
Because personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable paying a taxi in cash
up front
before I reached my destination without the meter running. That seems really, really uncomfortable to me, and I wouldn't feel comfortable in that situation either. So we asked Johnny if he reported this incident to the cab company.
I contacted the taxi company immediately. Within 10 minutes, I went onto their website. They have like an incident report form. I filled it out with all the details, and I've heard nothing since. That was like 4 a.m. last Saturday night. I have absolutely zero faith in the incident report form from my experience.
So we reached out to Blacktop for comment. They said they are not familiar with this complaint, but they stated, quote, "These kinds of issues are very rare and they're handled with utmost priority." They added that they will be in communication with Johnny to assess the complaint further because we passed on his email to them so that they can be in touch.
But first of all, Johnny's lucky to have you as a friend that you can bring this to their attention because they hadn't called him back. They hadn't even contacted him. So how rare can it be? Maybe they've got a bunch of complaints that they just haven't dealt with.
Well, I wonder if anyone else has complained to cab companies and they haven't received any kind of contact or any kind of information back from these companies. And do you have confidence in this incident complaint form that's on the websites? Or do you feel like you've been satisfied when complaining to a cab company? Do you feel like your complaint has been treated fairly and respected?
Yeah, so how does Johnny feel about this whole ride-hailing debate in this province?
Obviously, this has sort of tainted his opinion on it, and he shared that with us.
I am somebody who has experienced ride sharing across Canada and the US and Europe. The taxi companies, especially in BC, especially in Vancouver, paint themselves as white on white. They're the good guys. They don't want the ride sharing in. Ride sharing is bad. My experience this weekend is the total antithesis of that. I have never ever had a bad ride sharing experience. I have had an absolutely horrific experience with taxi companies this weekend. It's lost my total faith. As somebody who gets taxis regularly, maybe 5 times a week minimum for the last couple of years, this is what it's led to. It's absolutely unbelievable what that guy did last Saturday night.
That is just unreal. Nikki, have you ever had something like that happen to you? Bad experience?
I've had some not great experiences, especially with taxis asking you before you even get in, where are you going? And then them saying, no, I'm not going to take you there.
Yeah.
And we've seen that play out a lot in the media. But it's shocking that it's still happening.
It is shocking that even taxi drivers haven't realized they need to behave better if they want this bad publicity to go away. So we're going to take your calls on this. Have you ever had an experience, a bad one like that? Been denied a ride, driver not turning on the meter, maybe demanding cash up front? Has anything like that ever happened to you when you've gotten in a taxi? 604-280-9898. Let's go to Joanne. Hi, Joanne.
Yeah, hi, good morning.
Do you have a story like that?
Oh, who doesn't? Back in the day, I was leaving East Vancouver, heading downtown to meet my boyfriend late at night, and I was dressed nicely, in a nice dress, diamond earrings, diamond ring, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Got in a cab to go downtown. Cabbie was taking me along Hastings Street. I didn't realize that he hadn't turned on the meter, and when he asked me how I was going to pay, I told him I was going to put it on my credit card. He pulled over, dropped me off in Skid Row, at some ungodly hour of the morning. I walked up to the Patricia Hotel where I knew there would be an attendant, phoned the cab company and freaking reamed them out and told them that as a single woman in Skid Row, if anything ever happened to me, I'd be more than happy to sue them.
And what'd they say?
And they sent a cab down to pick me up to take me to my destination.
Wow. How long ago was that?
This was back in the day, so in the 90s. So since that time, nothing has changed. I just refuse to take taxis. I'll drive myself.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. Yeah. Well, thanks very much for the story. I do hear you on that one. I've gotten so, I don't know if it's this job or hearing all these stories, but I've gotten so paranoid kind of about, taxis not showing up and all that kind of stuff that even when I need to get to the airport now, I feel like I need to arrange a ride with a friend or family member as opposed to trying to call a taxi for fear that it might not show up. I mean, it feels like is where we've come to at this point. Let me go to Doug. Hi, Doug.
Hey, how are you? Yeah, this is such a joke. I blame local government. It's so embarrassing. I'm a businessman in Vancouver, and just to go to a Lions game, you're scared to get home. I live on the North Shore. North Shore taxi is great, but then the minute you want to use them, they're telling you what jurisdiction, what cab companies to use. It's no different than Pakistan and India. They control the bus business. They control it here. And they don't want any outsiders in their control. They don't care about that. That poor guy, that sounds like racism, too. Reverse racism. All it is
I'm not going to get started into that debate with you, but listen, why do you blame local governments? What can they do?
Well, you watch every Christmas time, every springtime into summer at the Port of Vancouver. Nothing is done about the lack of cabs. They talk about, they're going negotiating with the cab company to, they always have the same thing every year about, we're going to have more cabs, but local government's not helping us and blah, blah, blah. You know what? Until we get ride sharing here, Uber, they're going to control it, and it's a disaster. We're not a world-class city. It's a joke when people come here off the cruise ships.
Well, that's for sure. I do agree with you on that one there, Doug, because I saw some pictures of that recently. People on cruise ships, people at the airport. I got back from the airport a couple weeks ago on a Monday morning. Could not believe how long the cab lineup was. And I thought, boy, we welcome tourists to this. This seems ridiculous to me. Let me go to Sean. Hi, Sean.
Hey, Simi, great show. And just wanted to talk about not getting to a destination, but not even getting picked up in the first place.
What happened?
And, well, what happened is I was babysitting my godson, and his mom was taking his grandmother to the hospital. They were booked for an appointment at Mount St. Joseph's, and they are located in Yaletown. Not too far, but they wanted a cab because their dad works really early, and he's a long-time listener. He's probably listening now. And so I came over at about 7 a.m. to make sure I was there with the godson, who's younger, and they called the cab in advance. Then they called the cab an hour before they were supposed to get picked up to confirm the cab was coming. I'm sitting with him. It's 8 o'clock, and they're calling me from downstairs on the street saying the cab is still not here. Good thing I drove that day, and I ended up grabbing them and driving them to the hospital so they could make that critical appointment. But the cab never even showed up, never called back, nothing.
Oh, man, there's so many stories like that. Sean, thanks very much for that one, too. If you've got one to share with us, 604-331-BUZZ. That is our Buzz line. Go right ahead and give that a call. Let us know about your taxi horror story. The not show up, I think, is probably the most common one. You order a cab, you think it's supposed to be there, everything is good, they take your order. What other business are you just allowed to not provide the product? It just doesn't show up and there's no repercussions.